A man raises his right hand before the United States Senate. He swears to tell the truth, and then he doesn't. At least that's what senators are saying, not just one senator, three of them, in writing, on the record, with receipts. And the man they're accusing is not some low-level staffer. He is the director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the man Donald Trump put in charge of the most powerful law enforcement agency in the country. His name is Kash Patel, and what he is hiding, if the senators are right, could be one of the most explosive secrets in American politics right now.
Last month, Kash Patel fired roughly a dozen agents and analysts from the FBI's CI-12 unit, a counterintelligence unit dedicated to protecting Americans from foreign espionage. One of the foreign actors that this unit specializes in is Iran and its proxies. According to CNN, this unit was, and I quote, instrumental in tracking potential threats after the first Trump administration killed a top Iranian official in 2020. Just days after Patel.
That clip you just watched is from April 2026, this year. Senator Sheldon Whitehouse, looking straight at the FBI director, calling his sworn testimony false. That moment is not from a movie. That is a United States senator telling the head of the FBI to his face that he lied under oath to Congress. So how did we get here? Let me take you back to the beginning, because this story didn't start in 2026. It started years ago, in a grand jury room, with a secret that Kash Patel has been terrified to reveal ever since. Kash Patel is Donald Trump's hand-picked FBI director. He was confirmed in early 2025 after a fiery Senate battle. His supporters say he is a loyal fighter who would clean up a corrupt bureau. His critics say he was put there for one reason, to protect Donald Trump, no matter the cost. Before becoming FBI director, Patel was a lawyer, a government official. He worked in national security. He was on Trump's National Security Council. He advised Trump during some of the most sensitive moments of his first term. He is not a random name. He is one of the most powerful law enforcement officials in American history, and he testified before a federal grand jury. A grand jury that was investigating Donald Trump for holding on to top-secret classified documents at his Florida home, Mar-a-Lago. Here's where it gets interesting. In 2022, Kash Patel was called before a federal grand jury as part of the investigation into Donald Trump's handling of classified documents. You remember that case? The boxes of top-secret files found at Mar-a-Lago, the files that were never supposed to leave the White House. Patel was a key witness. And here is the first jaw-dropping detail. When he first showed up to testify, he invoked the Fifth Amendment. He said he might be incriminating himself. Now, the Fifth Amendment is your constitutional right. You can use it. But here's the thing. You don't invoke the Fifth Amendment when you have nothing to hide. You invoke it when your own words could put you in legal danger. The senators made that exact point in a February 2025 letter. They wrote, and I'm quoting directly, that invoking the Fifth requires a witness to show that their testimony would put them at, quote, substantial and real risk of criminal prosecution. Let that sink in. The man who now runs the FBI said, under oath, that answering questions about Trump and the classified documents could have gotten him prosecuted. He eventually got limited immunity and agreed to testify, which means prosecutors believed his testimony was worth trading away a criminal charge. That is how serious this was. Did you catch what White House was asking? He wanted to know, simply, whether Patel would let the committee see what he said in that grand jury room. A simple yes or no question. But Kash Patel didn't give a simple answer. He never does. And his non-answer has been driving senators crazy for over a year. Here is where the story gets genuinely stunning. During his confirmation hearing, Kash Patel said, and I want you to hear this clearly, he said, quote, "I would love my grand jury testimony to be released. I would love it." Those were his words, under oath, before the United States Senate. And then, when senators asked him to follow through, when they asked him to actually release it or authorize its release, he changed his story. He told the committee, in written answers also under oath, that he could not discuss or release his testimony because it was, quote, subject to a seal order. A seal order, a secret court order that supposedly prevents him from talking. There was just one problem. No one could find this seal order. The senators checked, their staff checked, legal experts checked, and the chief federal judge overseeing the case, Judge Boasberg, made a public statement. He wrote that under Federal Rule of Criminal Procedure 6E, witnesses like Patel are allowed to discuss the contents of their own testimony, meaning there was nothing stopping Patel from talking. Nothing. The senators wrote in their letter, "We are unaware of any such order in this case that prohibits grand jury witnesses from discussing their testimony. We do not believe, nor has Mr. Patel provided any evidence that such an order exists." Let me translate that into plain English. The senators believe Kash Patel told Congress he couldn't talk because of a seal order, and that seal order either doesn't exist or doesn't apply to him. If true, that is a lie, under oath to the United States Senate. Watch White House lay it all out. The promise, the written answer, the judge's response. It's like watching someone try to explain why their homework is late, and every excuse making things worse. But I want you to understand why this matters beyond politics, because this isn't just about Kash Patel. This is about what was in that grand jury room. Why would someone who says he has nothing to hide invoke the Fifth Amendment? Why would someone who says he'd love his testimony released then hide behind a seal order that doesn't exist? Why does the head of the FBI appear to be terrified of his own words? The answer most likely lives in what he told that grand jury, privately, about Donald Trump and those classified documents, and whether what he said then is the opposite of what he's been saying publicly ever since. If those two things don't match up, that is called perjury. Now, I want to tell you about something that happened in early March 2026, because this part of the story is almost unbelievable. Kash Patel fired a dozen FBI agents and staff from a counterintelligence unit called CI-12. This is the team inside the FBI that specifically tracks threats from Iran. These are the people whose whole job is to stop Iran from attacking Americans, assassinating U.S. officials, and running spy operations on American soil. According to CNN, CBS News, and multiple sources inside the FBI, these agents were fired not because they did anything wrong, but because they had been part of the team that investigated Donald Trump's handling of classified documents at Mar-a-Lago. Kash Patel fired them for doing their jobs, for following the law, for opening an investigation that he personally disagreed with. And here's the part that will take your breath away. Days after Patel fired these Iran experts, the Trump administration launched a major military strike on Iran. Days, not months, days. The team that was supposed to be protecting Americans from Iranian retaliation, tracking Iranian spies, monitoring Iranian threats, watching for assassination plots, had just been fired by the FBI director for political reasons. When Representative Steve Cohen confronted Patel in March 2026 and asked him directly, "The people you fired were experts on Iran, were they not?" Patel said, quote, "I don't believe so." The director of the FBI said he didn't believe the people he personally fired were Iran experts. Cohen pushed harder. "They worked in counterintelligence, did they not?" And Patel said, And this is a direct quote. "I'm taking you at your word, sir. I'm not familiar with..." And Cohen cut him off and said, "You're the director. I'm not. You should know the answer. You fired the people. Where did they work?" That exchange, the head of the FBI saying he doesn't know who he fired or where they worked, tells you everything you need to know about what is happening inside that building right now. Lawmakers from both parties were alarmed. Democratic Representatives Benny Thompson and Seth Magaziner sent a letter demanding answers. They wrote, and I'm quoting directly, "Firing these experts just days before President Trump ordered strikes on Iran not only raises questions about coordination across the Trump administration, but also about the FBI's ability to identify and counter dangerous Iranian operations on U.S. soil while our nations are at war." That is not a talking point. That is a warning from members of the House Homeland Security Committee. By the time Patel showed up for another Senate hearing in May 2026, a budget hearing before the Senate Appropriations Committee, lawmakers had months of grievances saved up. It was Senator Chris Van Hollen of Maryland who came in hot. He pointed to reports that Patel drinks excessively on the job, that he's sometimes unreachable by his own staff, and that the FBI had issued subpoenas to journalists covering the agency. Patel exploded. He called the allegations, and I'm quoting from PBS, quote, "unequivocally, categorically false." He said, quote, "I will not be tarnished by baseless allegations." He even filed a lawsuit against The Atlantic, which published the reporting he objected to. The Atlantic said it stands by every word, but here's what got lost in the drama. The bigger question, the question that has been hovering over all of these hearings since Patel's confirmation, the question White House has been trying to answer for over a year. What did Kash Patel tell that grand jury about Donald Trump and the classified documents? Because if what he said privately under oath contradicts what he's been saying publicly, that Trump declassified everything, that there was no wrongdoing, that the investigation was corrupt, then Kash Patel does not just have a credibility problem, he has a perjury problem. When you watch that clip, notice something. Patel is not calm. He is not measured. He is not acting like a man who has nothing to worry about. He is acting like a man who is under siege from his own record. You might be thinking, okay, this is all very dramatic, but what does it have to do with me? Here's the answer. This is not a Washington soap opera. The things Kash Patel has done have real consequences for real Americans. When you fire a dozen FBI agents who specialize in Iranian threats, and you do it days before your own country goes to war with Iran, you have left a hole in the shield protecting ordinary Americans from foreign attacks. Iran has previously plotted to assassinate American officials on U.S. soil. Former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, former National Security Advisor John Bolton, even Donald Trump himself. These are not hypotheticals. These are documented, charged criminal conspiracies. And the team of FBI agents who were trained to catch those plots, to intercept the spies, to map the networks, to prevent the attacks, have been fired. Not because they failed, because they investigated the wrong person. That is the choice Kash Patel made. And Americans, all Americans, not just Democrats, are less safe because of it. And there is something even bigger underneath all of this. When the head of law enforcement in this country appears willing to lie to Congress, to hide what he knows, to fire the people who investigated the president who appointed him, what does that say about whether the rule of law still works in America? Because here is the terrifying part. Kash Patel is still the FBI director, right now, today. He has not been charged with anything. He has not been forced to release his testimony. He has not been held accountable. And the senators who have been demanding answers, who have called his testimony false, are still waiting. Now let's talk about something that most videos won't show you. The way this story is being covered, or not covered, tells you a lot about where we are right now. About a dozen major outlets have been covering the firings, the grand jury questions, and the hearings. Washington Post, CNN, PBS, CBS News, The Guardian, Reuters, BBC, and more. but right-leaning outlets have mostly stayed quiet on the perjury and sealed testimony angle. Some have run pieces framing all of this as a political attack from frightened Democrats. One Fox headline called White House terrified of Patel cleaning up the FBI. The media bias platform Ground News shows this story has a significant blind spot on the right, meaning conservative audiences are simply not getting the full picture. And that matters, because if you only consume one kind of media, you might genuinely not know that the chief judge in this case publicly said there was no seal order stopping Patel from talking. That is not a Democrat claim. That is a federal judge. On the record, in writing, you deserve to know that, regardless of your politics. So, let's bring it all together, because I want to be very precise about what we know and what we don't. What we know, Kash Patel testified before a grand jury investigating Trump's classified documents. He first invoked the Fifth Amendment, suggesting his own words could have gotten him prosecuted. He later testified under limited immunity. What we know, he told the Senate at his confirmation hearing that he would love his grand jury testimony to be released. What we know, he then told the Senate in writing under oath that he couldn't release it because of a seal order. What we know, the chief federal judge overseeing the case said no such seal order prevented Patel from talking. What we know, Senator Whitehouse publicly called his testimony false, meaning Patel may have lied under oath to Congress. What we know, Patel fired a dozen FBI agents who specialized in Iran counterintelligence, and this happened days before the United States launched military strikes on Iran. What we know, when asked about the firings, Patel said he didn't know who he fired or where they worked. He is the FBI director. What we don't know yet is what Patel actually told the grand jury, the testimony he has been fighting so hard to keep hidden. But here is what seems very clear. A man who truly had nothing to hide would not have invoked the Fifth Amendment. A man who truly wanted his testimony released would not have invented a seal order. And a man who truly had confidence in his actions would not be fighting this hard to keep the curtain closed. The only question left is when, not if, the full truth comes out. When it does, we'll be here to walk you through every word. If this video helped you understand a story the mainstream media isn't connecting for you, hit that like button. It helps more people find us. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one. And drop a comment below. What do you think Kash Patel said in that grand jury room? I'll see you next time.